adaptive neuromuscular facilitation, which is what PNF stands for. And then we're going to go into some of the techniques. And when we're talking about PNF, it's mostly used to either increase mobility, so stretching or strengthening somebody, or it's to increase stability, okay, which I guess those are really the only two options we have. It's either stay still or move, right? And you can use PNF for both of those. So PNF is based on a lot of different theories by different people. So we're going to bring in some ideas from Sherrington. We're going to bring in, you can kind of double dip and use some of Rude's techniques that we had talked about listed on the board. Slow movement versus fast, quick stretch versus rotational movement, things like that. But then PNF also has some things that are very original to its own idea, okay? So we have to understand autogenic inhibition and reciprocal inhibition. Okay, so if you remember autogenic inhibition, that means when I contract a muscle, when I stop contracting it, it's going to relax a little more than it did before we started the movement. Okay, so if my baseline is here and I contract, when I relax that muscle, it goes past baseline. It relaxes a little more fully. Okay. If we go down to number 4 on your sheet, reciprocal inhibition, that means when I contract a muscle, its opposite is relaxing while I'm contracting the first muscle. Okay. And we're always talking about muscles that are antagonists to each other. So if I'm contracting my bicep, my tricep has to relax, otherwise I couldn't actually contract my bicep. I couldn't move. Okay, you guys remember those from Kines? We're good? Okay. 2 you probably haven't talked about before are irradiation and successive induction. So irradiation is the spread of excitation through the body part. Strong voluntary contractions will cause overflow to other body parts. Okay, so if I have weakness in my upper extremity, say I have weakness in my hand, okay, and you want me to flex my wrist and fingers, okay, instead of just having me isolate and try to do wrist and finger flexion, you will get better results if you have me contract stronger muscles in the same body part along with my finger flexors and wrist flexors. I will get a little bit of overflow. Okay, so maybe having me bend my elbow at the same time I bend my wrist and fingers, if my bicep is nice and strong. You'll get a little bit of overflow of excitation. Okay? And it kind of makes sense. You guys know if you had to pick up something heavy, you don't just go, that was really heavy. Okay, you go, like you get your abs involved, you know, you clench. I mean, you're squeezing stuff that you don't have to squeeze to pick up that box, but you're getting yourself prepped and primed. And it really does work. Okay, so that's irradiation. Successive induction means that movement in one direction will facilitate, hey Cass, why don't you stand up and take a walk? Movement in one direction will facilitate movement in the other direction, okay? Now this is not momentum, okay? This does not mean because I swung my arm up, it's going to swing back because of gravity or momentum. It means that movements share common pathways. And I kind of look at it as, because we're in Chicago and winter is coming, it's kind of like if I drive down a road, I kind of clear a path. And then when I go to drive back the other way, the path is already cleared. Okay, so I've kind of dusted off that pathway. I've cleared it to make signals easier to move. okay? So again, instead of isolating, bend your elbow, now extend your elbow back. Bend your elbow, bend your elbow, bend your elbow, and then later on, extend, extend, extend. You might actually get better activation with bend and straighten, bend and straighten. And again, it's not the momentum, it's the fact that the movements are sharing common pathways, and it's easier once you've moved in one direction for your body to move back in the opposite direction.
Is this happening in like the first part of it, like the roots, trunks, divisions part that's clearing? Like that initial stage before it branches out more?
So you're talking about the brachial plexus?
I guess that's what I was like picturing. Like, is this more like muscular or more nerve?
Nerve.
Nerve. Okay.
Your nerve.
Okay.
Okay, but more in the central nervous system, more about the pathways through, corticospinal pathway or spinal thalamic or whatever, and processing in the brain.
So it's just creating more of a clear pathway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna use a little bit of all of these ideas when we start with our PNF techniques, both for stretching and then also for strengthening and mobility or stability training. Okay, so let's go to restoring. Go ahead and stop that for me.